Hey, I'm Jesse. Let's have a devotion. We're in Matthew chapter 12, beginning in verse 46. While he was still speaking with the crowds, his mother and brothers were standing outside wanting to speak to him. Someone told him, "Look, your mother and your brothers are standing outside wanting to speak to you." He replied to the one who was speaking to him, "Who is my mother and who are my brothers?" Stretching out his hand toward his disciples, he said, "Here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother." Jesus refers to his disciples as his family. Now, he's not going to neglect Mary. He's not going to neglect even his half-siblings, his half-brothers, the biological children of Joseph and Mary. We see them at times try to pick on Jesus. For example, here's Mark chapter 6. He left there and went and came to his hometown, and his disciples followed him. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were astonished. "Where did this man get these things?" they said. "What is this wisdom that has been given to him, and how are these miracles performed by his hands? Isn't this the carpenter, the son of Mary, and the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon? Aren't his sisters here with us?" So they were offended by him. Jesus said to them, "A prophet is not without honor except in his hometown, among his relatives, and in his household." He was not able to do a miracle there except that he had laid his hands on a few sick people and healed them. And he was amazed at their unbelief. He was going around the villages teaching. So his siblings, right, his brothers and his sisters are referred to here in verse 3, but his brothers are named. James is one of them, by the way. He would go on to become a leader in the church of Jerusalem. The epistle James is written by this half-brother of Jesus. He would not neglect them, but man, they sure rejected him at first. Based on that, it's possible that as they wanted to speak with Jesus, Jesus in his sovereignty knew that what they would do would take him away from what he was doing in that moment ministerially. Now, he would tend to them. Okay, on the cross, even in John chapter 19, verses 25 through 27, he would see to it that John, one of the disciples, whom he referred to as his brother in this text, would look after his mother, Jesus. He tended to her. Moreover, Jesus' mother and brothers were present in the upper room at Pentecost. See Acts chapter 1, verse 14. At this point, he could not physically be with them. They likewise, if this trend continues from what took place at Nazareth, where Jesus was rejected and performed only a few miracles because of the lack of faith that was evident in his hometown, see Mark 6, verses 4 through 6, then Jesus knew how the conversation would go already. This was a distraction. What Jesus was doing was ministry, and his spiritual family was as important to him at that point as his physical family was. I remember when I started off as a youth pastor, it was hard, not only because I was only 22 years old, had no complete seminary education. I'd been in seminary for like 5 minutes, and was a 22-year-old, and the people of the church that I served at remembered me from the nursery. They remembered me running full speed through the fellowship hall, yelling at the top of my lungs. And like they were like, "You expect me to look at you like you have some sort of biblical knowledge, right?" But what's a blessing is that those same people loved and supported me and my family. Many of them served, and came to my ordination, where I was ordained at that church in the year 2008. And man, what a blessing it was. But this teaching came to mind. A prophet is not without authority and not without honor, except in his hometown, among his relatives, and in his household. Man, it's hard. It's hard to distinguish between, like, is this guy speaking from his own authority? Because I've been there when his football team is losing. Like, I changed his diapers, so I'm having a hard time taking the teachings he gives seriously. Versus, is this guy whom I happen to have known my whole life, I've watched him grow up as a little kid, grew up in the same hometown as him, in the same household as him, is he speaking the word of God? It's difficult in the modern context, for those who teach the Bible to have authority in their hometowns. I've been blessed by, thank you Heritage Baptist Church for serving in my ordinations, where I got this sword from my dad. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for using JCM curriculum. They're currently going through this study right now. Jesus received pushback from the members of his own household, all right? So if even Jesus wasn't taken seriously by his own half-brothers, man, you know that, that's right, you're going to face some pushback by the people who changed your diapers and watched you as a toddler, right? They're not always going to take you too seriously, because they have a hard time forgetting you running around the house with your underwear on your head. All right, it's difficult. It's difficult. If even Jesus faced it, you're probably going to face it too. But Jesus did take care of his family. Moreover, look at the way this teaching elevates the family of God, the spiritual family, the ones who are doing the will of God. He would refer to these people as his brothers and sisters. Man, I want to be counted among that group. Stretching out his hand toward his disciples, he said, "Here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother, and my sister, and my mother." Wow, I want to be counted among the family of Jesus. So I'm going to strive to do the will of God. It's a beautiful teaching when you remember the larger biblical context of it.